and they don't really like me. Cause I can fuck your bitch and fuck your mom and auntie.
Dumb dickhead.
XXL is a very popular magazine in the hip-hop space, but they are especially known for their annual freshman classes. Every year they release a list of 10 artists that are
that shit fell off at the
doing
2016.
all sorts of content with them, but people have always
2016 was peak.
ciphers. The annual freshman lists and ciphers have always generated a lot of buzz. However, it seems like people's interest is dwindling. Since 2016, the views on the ciphers in particular have gone down 98%. Just recently, they released the 2023 ciphers, and it has been met with a lot of negative reception. So after looking into it, I've come up with 3 reasons as to why interest in XXL has declined over the years. But first, to understand, we have to go way back to when XXL was just a small magazine. In 1997, Reggie Dennis, Robert Marriott, and James Bernard started XXL. These 3 were all previously editors from The Source, which was another magazine in the hip-hop space. For a while,
Twista had this on in The Source!
And the 2 magazines
That's right!
had some beef. They
That's
also
right!
actually had some beef with Eminem, who was upset at them because they said they don't do articles on white rappers. But after he blew up, they did a story on him saying he was a culture vulture and a KKK member. So he dissed them on the song Marshall Mathers with some pretty hilarious lines. Funnily enough, XXL actually responded to the diss by putting Eminem on the cover of one of their magazines, which is pretty crazy. Anyways, the first issue that XXL ever released was a double cover with Master P and Jay-Z. In the early 2000s, XXL began reaching higher heights and becoming a much more important magazine in the hip-hop community. They had made up with Eminem and sort of began to replace The Source in popularity. Paul Cantor of Medium.com said that by the time he started writing for XXL in 2004, things were booming. Meanwhile, the internet was becoming much more popular, and by 2007, there were a ton of blogs in the hip-hop space popping up. XXL was on top of things though, and created a website to publish articles very quickly. They were able to maintain relevance through this quick adaptation. Then in 2008, after almost 9 years of working there, the chief editor of XXL, Elliot Wilson, was let go from the company, but not before leaving behind a crucial idea. Elliot, along with his staff, came up with the iconic annual freshman class list, which would be what XXL is best known for today.
A W idea, actually.
Staff at XXL released the first issue of the
It was a good idea.
2007. Vanessa Sadden, the current chief editor of XXL, said that they were tired of putting the same faces and big artists on their covers, so they wanted to showcase newer artists on the scene. The 2007 class featured artists like Lupe Fiasco, Lil Boosie, Plies, and more. The first freshman class was simply a magazine with no extra online content, as they were just kind of getting into the digital world. In 2008, they didn't release a freshman class issue, likely because Elliot Wilson left that year. Then in 2009, Vanessa Sadden became the chief editor of XXL, and she was clearly invested in all of the different mediums of content that XXL was putting out.
And you've got to double up on content. You've got to be able to do content for a daily basis and then for a monthly basis. What you do for a website is a whole different thing than what you do for a magazine. You treat the content differently. So you just have to be familiar with what you're
I can't believe this is the bitch that's in charge of XXL is.
Your audiences are based on whether it's the magazine or the website, because they can be the same audience or they can be different.
So likely under her direction in the 2009 freshman class issue, they put out much more content with the artists. They put out 3 covers with different artists like Wale, B.O.B., Kid Cudi, and more. However, it was also the first year where they released a cappella freestyles with each artist. They also released a freestyle with Asher Roth, Charles Hamilton, and Mickey Fax, who were actually freestyling, going back and forth, having fun, with a beat playing in the background.
Like I told him, so go ahead and handle it.
Yo, hats off to Ash Roth. Now it's time for me to blast off Astronaut.
Kid Cudi
Asher Roth used to be that nigga back in the day.
And while it wasn't technically the first cipher, it essentially set the foundation for what would happen in the coming years. Following that, in 2010, they had one of their best freshman classes ever that would really set a precedent going forward. Vanessa had stated in interviews that they wanted to get artists that were set to blow and show a lot of longevity, without them having a debut studio album out with a record label. She had also mentioned that the freshman class is the XXL staff's opinions about which artists are up next, and that it wasn't entirely objective or voted in by fans. So with that in mind, I think XXL was right on the money when they chose artists
y'all
like
opinions
J. Cole,
was starting to be
Nipsey
ass.
Hussle, Wiz Khalifa, Freddie Gibbs, J-Rock, and many more for the 2010 freshman class. As far as content goes, they released the magazine along with the acapella freestyles with each artist. The next year, XXL would make another significant change that would become quite iconic in years to come, and that was the release of the freshman ciphers. The 2011 class featured plenty of great picks like Mac Miller, Lil B, Kendrick Lamar, YG, and Meek Mill. They released a ton of extra content like the roundtable interviews.
The XXL freshman cover is that one thing that you always strive for when you start really getting serious, when you like always would get the cover and you'd be like, one day maybe I'm gonna be on there, and it's just wild to actually be on there.
Right. You know what I mean? Because we coming up, we look at this magazine, you know what I mean? This the shit. We got to jump on it, and to even be in it and then be on it, that's amazing.
And of course, the ciphers. Pretty quickly, the XXL freshman list became a staple in hip-hop culture, signifying that an artist was on the come-up and was up next. They were only a couple years in and were pretty accurate with their picks. XXL was also a very popular magazine by this time, so the freshman list had some extra credibility.
If you are nominated to be on this cover, that's like a form of acclamation saying that you're on your way up the ladder.
They were so popular and important that people would argue every single year over who should have made the list. And the controversy really helped the list become even more popular.
Personally, I'm gonna speak my mind.
Please.
I think a lot of the motherfuckers on the list is corny as
Some lists were definitely better than others, but XXL was fairly accurate and was able to pick artists that would have longevity. In 2012, they had picks like Future, Danny Brown, French Montana, MGK, and more. They also introduced the ability for fans to vote for the 10th spot winner, who in 2012 was Iggy Azalea. 2013 was stacked with artists like Schoolboy Q, Joey Badass, Ab Soul, Logic, Travis Scott, and even Chief Keef. Chief Keef actually couldn't make the shoot since he was in jail, so they had to edit him into the cover. In 2014, XXL featured freshmen such as Chance the Rapper, Lil Bibby, Ty Dolla $ign, Kevin Gates, Lil Durk, Isaiah Rashad, and more. Another fun fact is that XXL had also been releasing mixtapes with these artists from 2010 to 2014, and I'm not sure why they stopped, but I think it'd be really cool if they brought it back. Also in 2014, they stopped releasing physical magazines, instead opting to go fully digital. In 2015, they released the freshman cover with artists like Fetty Wap, Vince Staples, Rory, and more. However, in 2016, something happened that would change XXL forever. In 2016, XXL released their freshman class list featuring 21 Savage, Kodak Black, Denzel Curry, Lil Uzi Vert, Lil Dicky, Anderson .Paak, G Herbo, Dave East, Designer, and the 10th spot winner, Lil Yachty. At first, there were a lot of people who were upset because there weren't as many lyricists on the list like there had usually been. The list was full of a bunch of mumble rappers, if you guys remember that ancient phrase. Regardless, they released the ciphers for these artists, and they were again met with many mixed reviews. A lot of people at first clowned and made memes about the artists and their ciphers, with people even writing up articles saying it was the worst cipher of all time. If only they knew what was coming.
But the best one of all time, though.
Stuck out about this cipher. Of course, I'm referring to the one with 21, Kodak, Denzel, Uzi, and
calling Denzel a mumble rapper is fucking actually disrespectful.
They all had really good chemistry, and the verses were all actually pretty solid. Uzi's verse shouting everyone out, everyone smiling in the background, everyone ad-libbing each other during one another's verses, Kodak making fun of the beat and everyone laughing, and I think everyone had some memorable lines. It was a super fun cipher with amazing chemistry that we don't see in a lot of the other ciphers. The only ciphers I think that come close in this sort of chemistry and fun energy are the ones with Kendrick and Lil B, Lil Durk and Ty Dolla $ign cipher, and the one in 2009, which wasn't even really a cipher. Everything from the cipher to the cover for the 2016 class.
Bro, that shit was peak. It really don't matter what nobody say about this shit. Like, this shit was peak.
However, the 2016
you really just had to be there.
In some way, a double-edged sword. On one hand, it would eventually make people much more interested in the XXL freshman list, hoping that they would see some more fun ciphers and other great content.
Like, that shit was a moment for real. Like, you really just had to be there.
First reason as to why XXL is declining, and that is because, on the other hand, it likely set people's expectations way too high for what would happen in future ciphers. The chemistry, variety, and overall fun in the 2016 ciphers weren't very common beforehand, and they weren't super common afterwards, leading people to be disappointed with the upcoming ciphers. They also got very lucky.
I like the one with X too.
Pretty much everyone from that.
Everybody was making fun of that when it shouldn't know X for that. I kind of like that shit.
Able to replicate that on most of the more recent classes. Regardless, the 2016 ciphers have the most views on average average than any other class. Following the hype of the 2016 freshman class, XXL came through again with a lot of solid picks for 2017. Although a handful of artists from that class wouldn't go on to be as big as the 2016 class, they still featured
This
people
class
like
was
X,
okay.
Amine, Playboy Cardi, and others. At the time though, these artists were super hot, and these ciphers became the second most viewed on average out of all of the others. X's cipher in particular went viral after his interesting verse.
That shit was hard.
Though, this class and these ciphers were a lot of fun. However, in 2018, the freshman class would highlight yet another issue that I think is causing people to lose
This shit was
interest in
mid.
XXL. One thing that had become much more evident in ciphers with artists like Fetty Wap, Designer, Cardi, and now most of the 2018 class is that rap is changing. A lot of artists are less reliant on lyricism and instead focus on production, vocals, and melodies to make a good track. This is very evident in Pump, Black Boy, and Perp's cipher. They were having a lot of fun and had great chemistry, but they weren't good at all. They all did see success in their careers though, because their strengths were in their ability to write catchy hooks and rely heavily on their production.
That shit was
As
terrible.
Medium.com says, if they really want to get things right, and if they really want to be relevant and respectful of modern music, XXL magazine needs to do what responsible leaders do when traditions become archaic and outdated. They need to highlight the talents of the artist past only lyricism. And this is a really good point because a lot of artists nowadays in the rap scene aren't as reliant on lyricism as previous rappers were. Of course, I can't ignore Jid and Ski's cipher as they both had great verses and are much better fit for a cipher, but the rest I can't say the same about. 2019 had a solid freshman class too, with artists like Cordae, Megan Thee Stallion,
Alright, this
Lil
list was
Nasty,
okay.
Baby, and others. However, a few artists on this list like Blueface, Lil Mosey, and YK Osiris helped demonstrate the idea that ciphers don't
Mosey
work
and
out
OK
for
Osiris
artists.
shouldn't have been
The
on
2020
there.
list was also very solid, featuring artists like Polo G, Jack Harlow,
2020 was
Emily
alright,
Chapa,
too.
Rod Wave, and many
Baby
more
King
great picks.
took the fuck off.
ciphers were actually pretty good, and even the more melodic artists performed very well. I don't
Baby
think
King was
anyone really
clearly the
had
best
that
one on that
verse.
list.
The beats were catered to them, and it was a really good class. It was actually the last round of ciphers to average 10 million or more views, and from there, it would be downhill. Following the 2020 freshman class, views on the ciphers and overall interest began to decline. In 2021, the class featured artists like Ian Dior, 42 Doug, Pooh Shiesty, and others.
That shit was
Ciphers
mid
averaged
as
75%
fuck. Nah,
less
this shit was
views than the
terrible,
previous
dog. I'm
four.
not gonna
In
lie.
2022, the freshman class featured Babytron, Saucy Santana, Sofego, Nardo Wick, and more. This class again
Kinda
wasn't
mid.
terrible, but it wasn't as good compared to the previous classes.
Babytron was the
and
best one
had
on there.
even less views on average than the previous year. And now we get to this year's freshman class, which has been facing a ton of criticism. The class had artists like Glorilla, Central
This
C,
one is
Lil
mid, too.
Tyler, and more. The announcement video had less views than any other announcement
I
video
feel like if
before.
these
All you
niggas
gotta
not gonna do
is look at the
freestyles,
like
stop
ratios
letting them
in
be on the
comments
list.
to get an idea of how fans are feeling. And I think I've come up with a reason for this lack of interest. So my third and final reason for the decline of XXL is because rap in general is kind of getting stale. Now before you get mad at me, hear me out real quick. At first I was gonna say that picks recently have been weak, but then I thought, who else could they really pick? A lot of big artists to come out recently like Yeet or Ice Spice have declined XXL, so there really weren't too many other options. No matter who XXL
And it
picks,
makes sense
there
that
aren't a
Yeet
lot
and
of
Ice
artists
Spice
right
would
now that are going
turn it
to
down
blow
because
up
they
to
can't
a
really
big
rap.
mainstream
They
level.
wouldn't do a
And that's not even
freestyle
the
for
artist's fault. Recently, rap
or
has been
cypher.
declining statistically. An article from Billboard states that rap has slightly dipped in its musical market share as other genres like rock and country have been growing quite a bit. And of course, I'm not trying to make this stupid argument that rap is dead like I've seen a lot of other outlets do. I just think there aren't many new artists blowing up to a mainstream level right now. The first rap album
Plus,
to
they
go
bigger
number
than
one
this
this year
shit.
was 6 months
For real,
in
for
from
real.
Lil Uzi Vert, which kind of demonstrates the fact that artists who were previously successful will still pull numbers, but there aren't just as many new guys doing that. In the early 2010s, you had scenes with artists like Mac Miller, Kendrick, Drake, J. Cole, and others blowing up. In the mid 2010s, you had the SoundCloud era with Uzi, Cardi, X.
Yeah,
Juice
music
WRLD,
was
people like that
changing.
blowing up. And in the
Music
late
was
2010s, you had
changing a
people
lot
like Roddy,
when
Polo G,
that 2016
DaBaby, and
one
others
was right
blowing
there.
up. But this decade, I'd argue that
That
we
was like
haven't
a
really
perfect
seen any
time.
scenes like that blowing up to a mainstream level. Of course, there are little pockets like Detroit rap, the opium sound, the drill sound, but there really hasn't been one scene that's taken over the mainstream. And that's perfectly okay. I'm not blaming the artists or the community or the fans. I think that things need to get a little bit stagnant so that people want to hear something new. So I'm really just saying all this to dissuade hate from the newer artists on the new covers. I don't think the freestyles were
The
bad.
2016
I think a
list
lot of them
happened at
make
the
pretty
right
good
fucking
music. I
time.
just think the whole genre or scene as a whole isn't as interesting to mainstream listeners listeners as it has been. Of course, I'm
Everything
sure
else after that felt
rap
forced.
is going to be one of the top dog genres, just as it has been for the last few decades, and I think it'll be like that for quite a while. So in my opinion, because of the high standards set in 2016, the outdated style of ciphers in general, and the overall distance in the rap scene from mainstream listeners, is why the XXL freshman
rap changing and it's getting stale.
But like I said, it isn't all bad.
That makes sense. Everybody making like different type of
captivate
rap albums now,
and bring a whole lot more interest to
branching completely
artists,
the fuck
and I'm
out.
sure that XXL will be on top of it, just like they have been in previous years. Let me know down below in the comments if you disagree with me or if you agree with my take on this, or if maybe you have another possible reason.
Some good takes.
I don't really do
this was a good video.
Videos like this. I mean, a lot of it was, you know, facts and statistics, but some of it was opinions. So let me know what you guys think down below. If you want to see more of my takes on things.
Good video.